Think about a traditional bank vault for a second. The image that instantly pops into your head is pretty universal, right?
Oh, yeah, totally. You picture those, like, 3-foot thick, solid steel doors.
Exactly. Maybe some complicated physical combination dials or, highly trained guard patrolling the hallways. It's incredibly tangible.
Right, because the threat in that traditional scenario is entirely physical. So the defense mechanism naturally has to be physical as well. It's very binary.
Yeah.
The steel door is either locked or it isn't.
Right, exactly. But today, the most valuable assets in the world are not sitting on wooden pallets in a dusty basement. They are entirely invisible.
Yeah, they're flowing through fiber optic cables across oceans.
Bouncing between remote servers and, existing simply as lines of digital code. And the security system protecting all of that wealth. Well, it is not made of steel or concrete. It is made of complex, highly sophisticated regulatory frameworks.
Which are arguably much harder to visualize.
Oh, absolutely. Welcome to the WeCyberYou Unlocked podcast. Make sure to hit that follow button on the channel wherever you're listening right now. And absolutely make sure to visit WeCyberYou.com for more content exactly like this.
It is a fantastic stack of sources you provided for us today.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one.
Our mission for today's deep dive is to look at the Abu Dhabi Global Market, this massive, booming international financial center, and understand exactly how they built one of the most advanced, GDPR-aligned privacy frameworks in the Middle East.
Okay, let's unpack this. To really understand why these specific regulations are so rigorous, we first have to look at the unique environment they govern.
Right. The setting is everything here.
Exactly. The Abu Dhabi Global Market, or ADGM, isn't just a regular business park. It is a massive financial free zone with its own civil and commercial legal framework. We're talking about a hub that hosts major global banks, cutting-edge fintech companies, asset managers, and huge professional services organizations.
And that context is so crucial. When you have billions of dollars and petabytes of data flowing through a single jurisdiction every single day, the rules governing that flow have to be ironclad.
They really do.
The ADGM actually had an older data protection framework established back in 2015. But think about how much the digital economy changed between 2015 and 2021.
Oh, it was a totally different world.
Right. The sheer volume of cross-border data transfers exploded. Cloud computing became the default for almost everyone.
So the 2015 rules just couldn't keep up with the mechanics of modern finance.
Exactly. The 2021 update was designed specifically to support modern global financial services, to facilitate highly secure cross-border data transfers, and to completely align the ADGM with the absolute highest international privacy standards, specifically the European GDPR.
Which is the gold standard.
It is. And to establish this new baseline, the law clearly divides the corporate world into two main entities. You have data controllers and data processors.
Let's break those down because they sound like components of a motherboard, but we are talking about actual organizations here.
Yeah, it's a bit technical. So a data controller is the entity that determines why and how personal data is being processed in the first place.
Okay.
Think of a major investment bank deciding to collect your financial history to approve a massive loan, or even just an employer collecting your banking details to put you on the corporate payroll.
So they're the ones pulling the strings.
Exactly. They are calling the shots. They own the why. Then you have the data processor. This is a third-party company that does the actual processing work strictly on behalf of the controller.
Like who?
So that would be the massive cloud computing provider hosting the bank's digital infrastructure, or maybe an external IT outsourcing firm managing the employer's database.
Right, let me push back on that dynamic for a second. If I am a massive cloud provider like an AWS or an Azure, and I am just renting out server space to a bank, I'm the processor, right? I am just following orders. Does that mean I am completely off the hook if the bank collected that data illegally?
No.
Am I, as the processor, supposed to aggressively audit this massive bank before I lease them a server?
If we connect this to the bigger picture,
Yeah.
you start to see why the 2021 regulations had to be so robust. No, as a processor, you are not expected to audit the controller's initial legal justification for collecting the data.
Okay, good. That would be a logistical nightmare.
It would be impossible. The controller holds that primary responsibility. However, you are absolutely not off the hook.
Interesting.
Processors carry massive, direct legal accountability for keeping that data secure while it is in their custody.
Yeah.
You cannot just leave the digital server door unlocked and say, hey, it's not my data, I just provided the room.
Right.
Both controllers and processors are essential, highly regulated cogs in this secure global financial machine.
That makes a lot of sense. You can't have a secure financial hub if the third-party IT vendors are leaving the back door open. So now that we know who is handling the information, we really need to define what exactly constitutes personal data in this modern digital age.
It's broader than most people think.
Because I imagine it is far more complex than just a digital Rolodex of names and phone numbers.
It is vastly more comprehensive. Under the ADGM regulations, personal data is defined as any information relating to an identified or identifiable natural person.
So the standard stuff.
Right. Obviously, that includes your name, your physical address, your passport number, national ID, and your financial records. But it also explicitly includes your IP address, your location data, and your online identifiers.
Online identifier.
The invisible digital footprints you leave behind just by interacting with the network.
Honestly, that concept always creates a bit of friction for me. Is an IP address really on the same level of personal as, say, a passport number?
It's a great question.
I mean, a passport has my photograph and a government seal on it. An IP address is just a dynamic string of numbers assigned to my router by an internet service provider.
It's a very common point of confusion, but it speaks to how sophisticated data analysis has become. An isolated IP address might not spell out your legal name right away.
Right.
But by combining that IP address with your online identifiers, your search habits, and your location pings over a period of time, organizations can triangulate those data points to paint a vivid, undeniable picture of exactly who you are.
Wow.
It tells them where you live and what your specific habits are. It completely strips away your anonymity. That is why the framework treats it as personal data.
That is terrifying, actually.
It is.
Yeah.
And beyond that standard personal data, the ADGM carves out a highly protected tier called special categories of data.
The truly sensitive information.
Exactly. This includes your health and medical information, biometric data like facial recognition scans or fingerprints, genetic data, your racial or ethnic origin, your political opinions, religious beliefs, trade union membership, and your sexual orientation.
Wait, why would a financial hub care about something like trade union membership?
Because processing that specific kind of data can lead to severe systemic discrimination.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, if an algorithmic lending platform factors in trade union membership or racial origin, it could unfairly deny loans to entire demographics.
That makes total sense.
So if an organization wants to process this special category data, the standard rules do not apply. They face a much higher hurdle.
What do they have to do?
They usually need your explicit, informed, written consent, or they need a very specific, undeniable legal authorization under employment or public health laws to even touch it.
Because this data is so incredibly identifying and powerful, organizations simply aren't allowed to hoard it. There are fundamental rules dictating exactly how they are permitted to handle your information.
The 7 core principles.
Exactly. Instead of just listing these out like a textbook, let's explore the tension here. The framework lays out these 7 principles, starting with lawfulness, fairness, and transparency.
Right, which means you cannot trick someone into giving you their data. You must have a valid legal reason, and your privacy notice must be written in plain language, not buried in 50 pages of legal jargon.
Nobody reads those anyway.
Exactly, which is why they have to be transparent now. The second principle is purpose limitation.
Which prevents the classic corporate bait and switch.
Yep.
If a courier company collects your phone number strictly to text you delivery updates, they cannot suddenly take that database of phone numbers and use it to blast you with marketing texts for a new credit card.
Exactly. The data was collected for a specific purpose, and it cannot stray from that. The third principle is data minimization. You can only collect the absolute minimum amount of information necessary to achieve that specific purpose.
So what does this all mean in practice? Think of data minimization like packing for a weekend trip.
Oh, I like that.
Right. You only pack the exact minimum you need for the stated purpose of the trip. If you are going on a beach vacation and you throw a heavy snowsuit into your luggage, you're violating the principle. It makes no sense.
That is a great way to look at it. If an app needs to know your age to verify you are over 18, they shouldn't be demanding your exact birth date, birth city, and mother's maiden name.
Exactly. Moving forward, the fourth principle is accuracy companies must keep your data up to date.
Right.
Fifth is storage limitation, meaning the data cannot sit on a server forever. Once you close your bank account, they eventually have to delete or permanently anonymize your profile.
And sixth is integrity and confidentiality, which mandates the actual cybersecurity controls.
Right, the firewalls and all that. And finally, accountability.
And accountability is the heavy hitter here. It means it is not enough to just quietly follow the rules. Organizations must actively document their processes and be able to prove their compliance to the regulators on demand.
They have to show their homework.
Exactly. But let's rewind to that very first principle, lawfulness. The ADGM explicitly outlines 6 lawful bases for processing standard data. A company must legally justify their actions using at least one of these 6.
Consent and contractual necessity are the obvious ones. You agree to it, or they need the data to fulfill a contract with you.
Then you have legal obligation, where a law explicitly requires the processing, like anti-money laundering regulations forcing a bank to verify your identity.
Right.
You also have vital interests, which sounds dramatic, but it is very real. Imagine a high-net-worth individual collapses in an ADGM corporate office, and the company needs to urgently share their sensitive medical profile with first responders to save their life.
That is definitely a vital interest.
Yeah. Then there is public task, mostly for regulatory authorities. And finally, legitimate interests.
And legitimate interest is the one that always causes the most friction in the corporate world.
What's fascinating here is how often companies try to rely on legitimate interests, thinking it is just a free pass.
Oh, totally.
It is not. It requires a highly complex balancing act. A company can process your data without your direct consent if they have a legitimate business reason. For example, a bank deploying an AI to analyze your transaction patterns to detect and prevent credit card fraud.
Sure, that makes sense.
However, the law forces them to rigorously prove that their corporate need does not override your fundamental rights and freedoms as an individual.
So they can't just do whatever they want.
No. If a company tries to claim a legitimate interest in secretly tracking your precise GPS location 24/7 just to serve you targeted ads, the regulator will completely reject that. The intrusion into your privacy heavily outweighs their desire to sell ads.
Which brings us to a massive paradigm shift in these regulations. Because these rules place such heavy constraints on the organizations, the balance of power naturally shifts back to the individuals.
It really does.
The 2021 ADGM framework grants everyday people a powerful suite of digital rights.
It absolutely empowers the data subject. Let's look at the mechanics of what you are legally entitled to. First, you have the right to access. You can knock on a corporation's door and demand a copy of all the personal data they hold on you.
And logistically, that is a nightmare for companies.
Oh, a total nightmare.
They don't just push a button. They have to scrape legacy systems, emails, and backups to compile your profile. You also have the right to rectification, meaning you can force them to fix incorrect data.
Yep.
And then there is the famous right to erasure, often called the right to be forgotten.
Yep.
But how does that actually work mechanically?
It's tricky.
Can I just email my bank, invoke my right to erasure, and demand they delete the record of my massive mortgage?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Individual rights are not absolute. They are always balanced against other laws. Your bank has an overriding legal obligation to maintain financial records for anti-money laundering and taxation purposes. They will flat out reject your request to delete the mortgage. Right. However, if you invoke the right to erasure regarding, say, the marketing profile they built to sell you insurance products, they absolutely have to delete that portion of your data.
That makes sense. You also have the right to restrict processing so they can store the data but not actively use it. And you have the right to object to certain activities like automated decision-making.
Exactly.
But let's talk about the right to data portability. Does this mean if I am tired of my current wealth management app and want to switch to a competitor, I can just demand my entire financial history be exported and moved over to the new company?
Yes, and the mechanical implications of that are staggering. Data portability legally treats your personal data as a tangible asset that belongs to you.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not proprietary data owned by the corporation that just happens to be hosting it. It actively destroys the concept of vendor lock-in.
That is huge for consumers.
It is. If a company knows you can pack up your digital bags and move your entire profile to a competitor in a machine-readable format at any time, they are forced to compete on service quality rather than just holding your data hostage.
Having all of these individual rights is great, but any regulatory framework needs heavy safeguards to ensure those rights actually hold up in the real world.
Especially when things go wrong.
Exactly, especially when entirely new invasive technologies emerge or when the network falls under a cyber attack. The ADGM has built a robust system of internal shields, alarms, and strict borders.
Let's look at the internal shields first. For organizations engaging in large-scale processing or handling those highly sensitive special categories of data, the law mandates the appointment of a data protection officer, or a DPO.
Right, and this isn't just an IT guy given a secondary title.
Not at all. This person must be an independent privacy watchdog embedded inside the organization. They monitor compliance, advise the C-suite, and act as the direct, secure contact point with the ADGM regulators.
And the framework requires organizations to conduct data protection impact assessments, or DPIAs, whenever a new processing activity poses a high risk to individual privacy.
This is a huge shift.
Yeah, this is mandatory if a company wants to deploy artificial intelligence, large-scale behavioral monitoring, or biometric scanning systems.
This raises an important question about the fundamental culture of technology companies. For decades, the dominant mantra in the tech world was move fast and break things.
Oh yeah, launch the product, see what happens, and patch the problems later.
Right. But the DPIA requirement legally outlaws that mentality in this jurisdiction. You cannot move fast and break things anymore.
You have to be proactive.
Exactly. You have to meticulously document the risks, build the privacy safeguards into the underlying architecture, and prove to the regulator that your new AI tool is safe before you are legally allowed to turn it on. It is a profound structural shift.
Now, what happens when those proactive shields inevitably fail? Because no digital vault is completely impenetrable. Here's where it gets really interesting. If a personal data breach occurs, the regulations start a brutal ticking clock.
The 72-hour rule.
Yes. Organizations are legally required to notify the ADGM Office of Data Protection and potentially the affected individuals within 72 hours of becoming aware of the breach.
72 hours is an incredibly tight window.
Exactly. Imagine the sheer panic and the mechanical scramble happening inside a corporate incident response team when a breach is discovered late on a Friday night.
Nobody is going home that weekend.
Nope. Historically, companies would hide a breach for months while they figured out the PR spin. Under this framework, you don't have weeks. You have 3 days to secure the network, figure out exactly whose data was stolen, assess the risk of harm, and report the entire disaster to the authorities.
It completely changes the playbook.
It forces companies to have forensic teams and incident response plans ready on day one.
It ensures total transparency during a crisis. And, we also must discuss the borders.
Right.
The ADGM is an international financial hub, meaning data constantly needs to flow to London, New York, Singapore. But the regulations dictate that personal data cannot just freely flow across borders.
So what's the rule?
You can only transfer data outside the ADGM if the destination country has adequate, highly equivalent data protection laws.
And if they don't?
If they don't, the transferring organization has to implement incredibly strict contractual safeguards.
Like what?
Like standard contractual clauses, legally binding the foreign recipient to treat the data exactly as if it were still sitting inside the ADGM. You cannot just offshore your data processing to a jurisdiction with zero privacy laws to bypass the rules.
Which is brilliant. Plus, any organization processing personal data is mandated to implement strict security and technical controls. We are talking robust, state-of-the-art encryption, multi-factor access controls, and mandatory ongoing employee cybersecurity training.
All of these rules, individual rights, and operational safeguards culminate in a system backed by serious enforcement power.
They really don't mess around.
No, the ADGM Office of Data Protection is a formidable regulator. They have the ultimate authority to launch deep forensic investigations, conduct surprise corporate audits, issue legally binding compliance orders, and impose very significant administrative and financial sanctions on companies that violate the regulations.
It's no wonder this framework is considered the gold standard in the region. By aligning so closely with the European GDPR, the ADGM makes it vastly easier for massive international corporations to operate seamlessly across different global jurisdictions.
Yeah, they speak the same regulatory language.
Exactly.
It creates a universal baseline of privacy that protects the individual while providing a predictable, stable environment for global commerce.
So bringing this all back to you listening to this deep dive right now, why should you care about the granular details of a regulatory framework operating out of Abu Dhabi? Well, whether you are an executive prepping for a major global business expansion, a software developer building the next big fintech application, or simply an individual who wants to understand how your digital privacy is maintained, these regulations represent the blueprint for the future.
They absolutely do.
This is exactly how the most critical, high-stakes international hubs are actively choosing to handle and secure our digital lives. Thank you so much for joining us. Before you go, please make sure to visit WeCyberYou.com for more deep dives and expert analyses on the framework shaping our modern world.
It's been a great discussion.
The threats to our wealth and our information may have evolved from physical lockpicks to invisible lines of malicious code, but the vault is still very real. It just looks different now. Which leaves us with a fascinating final thought for you to mull over. If strict, deeply enforced, GDPR-aligned frameworks like the ADGMs are rapidly becoming the mandatory global baseline for even participating in international finance, what happens to the companies operating in regions that stubbornly refuse to adopt these privacy standards? Will they eventually find themselves completely locked out of the global digital economy?